Good afternoon, everybody. This is Gary Winkler. I'm president of American Cyber, former PEO for Enterprise Information Systems in the Department of the Army, and direct report to the CIO G6 at one point. And I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Pete Godby. He's the User Engagement Officer of DISA's Cloud Computing Program Office. And today we're going to talk about some of his challenges and his office's challenges associated with identity management and cloud authentication, and just kind of run the gamut on what they're working on. And Pete, do you want to take a second to talk about your office and just give the audience some background?
Thank you. Thank you for having me today, Gary. So fundamentally, the Cloud Computing Program Office is a DISA center, and our vision is really transforming cloud to enable the warfighter. And that's really ties into everything we do. It's part of our DNA. We're very mission driven, I would say, in addressing warfighter capability gaps. We have a tendency to be a little bit non-traditional, but at the same time, we're not an intentionally disruptive office. Our goal is to find long-term solutions to some of the kind of intractable or difficult to solve capability gaps. Really, it's driving enduring change, which is our mantra, is that it's not just to come in and solve something in a short term, but develop the systems, processes, and really relationships between different offices across the DoD to help the warfighter.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Hey, could you talk a little bit about some of the key initiatives your office has going related to identity management and cloud authentication? You know, we've got this big push, move all systems and applications to the cloud. Everybody's trying to capitalize on commercial cloud and other cloud benefits. How do those initiatives tie into your office, and why is it important for your organization's success?
Well, TCPO kind of has at least a finger into all things cloud, working to bring cloud faster, make it more secure, and to make sure that the data that we transmit is more survivable at the tactical edge. But really, this comes down in the capability gap for identity management and cloud authentication for the global directory service that we've been deploying for about the last about 10 months now, where it's been an active production system. So the challenge, really, the capability gap, was that the DoD lacked a secure and centralized kind of commonly used identity. So what this happens when you don't have a single identity that can go across the entire DoD is it fundamentally degrades the ability of trust. And that's what we're pushing here, is once you get centralized identity and centralized authentication, we can build out this trust platform really globally. There's been analogies out there, especially around kind of camp posts and stations. Right now, how the DoD is set up is that every single system, when you have a separate authentication and identity platform, it's like every single camp post or station across the DoD running your own ID card system almost, so that you're being validated only against local configuration and local settings. What we built out with Global Directory is a platform that allows the integration across the entire DoD. It's really to build that fundamental and trust relationship.
Okay, good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So hopefully that's moving along at the schedule and the rate of progress that you're trying to achieve. You mentioned support to the warfighter and everything you're doing and what your office is doing. And so what are the challenges in using or leveraging identity management techniques and tools to support the warfighter in the cloud environment? And then kind of a nuance to that is, warfighters in the reserves and National Guard have kind of special challenges, and what's being looked at as potential solutions for them?
Well, I think there's a couple different challenges with the DoD, and especially identity in the DoD. The first kind of challenge is the scale that we're talking about. When you're talking about 3.4 to 3.5 million user base, which is just our internal DoD user base, the people who have the CAC card, that's generally a scale 1 or 2 orders of magnitude larger than most of what commercially found, especially when you talk internal corporate environments. So even working with that, we have a tendency to bend or kind of break the systems that are existing out there that are already cloud-based systems for the corporate environment or even for the federal environment. The second one out there is exactly what you're talking about, is not just the reserves and guards or the people who are forward deployed, but we call them kind of disadvantaged locations. And for these disadvantaged locations, doesn't matter if it's a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, if it's a National Guard unit that's out there supporting a Homeland Defense mission or a disaster response mission, or if it's for a Marine or Army unit deployed overseas in someplace sandy. Those disadvantaged locations have a challenge with reaching back and pulling cloud-based services. So everything we're doing inherently has to be built out with those systems and those teams in mind. With the reserves and National Guard, we know that their disadvantaged locations, everybody has unique challenges, but bring in all those different use cases into the DoD umbrella. Just documenting getting through working with them can be a significant challenge, because right now we're currently so siloed with those different systems that we explained earlier, that I don't know we have all the challenges identified. We're kind of running into them on an individual basis. I'm not going to say on a daily basis, but it certainly feels like that some days.
Yeah, no, I understand. And then while you were talking, it made me think of our industry partners who, and particularly in the supply chain and commercial companies who need access to our systems, and you have to work with their authentication as well in the cloud system. So how are you knitting them into what you're doing?
I think the defense industrial base is another challenge out there. We need to be able to have external federation or external trust, because it all gets back to that word trust. If I can't trust that a federal, a state, a local partner, a vendor partner, or a industrial partner out there is who they say they are fundamentally, we can't go on to the old days where we look at, oh, you're sending it from a CCPO or a DISA.mil email address, so this person inherently has to be trusted. We need something deeper and more fundamentally tied together, where not only it's displayed to the user, but we also can provide that to our cyber defenders, that they have the ability to do correlation between activities across the entire DoD information network.
Yeah, good. Hey, there's a lot of budget pressure, Lieutenant Colonel Godby, and I'm sure everybody wants to know if there's a return on investment or savings associated with effective and efficient cloud authentication and identity management solutions for the warfighter, or if it's really about a core capability without regard to cost, just like cybersecurity, you have to do it. There really are no savings or cost avoidance, unless you're talking about cost avoidance associated with fixing a breach, that happens after the fact, which is always very, very expensive. So can you talk to that a little bit about the return on investment or savings? Is that even a factor?
Of course. Anytime when you remove siloed systems, when you do centralized management, I'll say quite honestly, it's why our commercial partners are leveraging cloud-based systems, is reduction of redundancy. Fundamentally, it's cheaper and more reliable to kind of centralize a lot of these services. It's why people use single sign-on approaches across the entire really federal space now, but also commercial space. If we can provide that for the DoD, instead of there being dozens, possibly up to hundreds of authentication systems in the federal, in the DoD space right now, if we just reduce that round, even for cloud-based systems, as new ones are being built, and not trying to go after all the legacy environments, then we can start talking a significant amount in cost savings. You guys know better than me what it costs in licensing, and especially if we're doing per user licensing out there. And licensing, that's a really important thing. Licensing the same user over and over again. So when I'm hitting an Army system, I need a license for that. When I'm hitting an Air Force or a joint or a medical system, I need a different license because I have a different authentication system. That's really where the cost savings come in. But that being said, the cost savings isn't the warfighter capability gap. It's something that's critically important. It's something that nobody has a blank check out there. everything we do is under a budget and to use the best resources of the federal government and of the United States. That being said, it's still focused on that capability gap. We're not out there just to save money. We're out there to deliver a service that's fundamentally needed by the people on the tip of the spear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so we've got our current environment, you can call it legacy environment, and we're trying to get to something that'll support the joint world, co-coms and joint operations. What do you say about people who say, hey, what we have works? Isn't it good enough? And what are the risks associated with just the status quo? And is it different levels of risk? So maybe the status quo is fine for some operations, back office operations, but I would think in the joint environment or co-coms where you have people from various services, military departments moving in and out, all working together, it gets very challenging if everybody has a different authentication mechanism or identity management. How are you wrestling with those different levels of risk?
I think you really described it very well. The risk really for us is in a couple fold. So first of all, it's that decreased trust, decreased interoperability, and the increase in security risks that we kind of talked about also. But it's also around that right now by managing those individual identity systems and authentications systems out there, we're removing resources from units and organizations and services. When I say services, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, they could be doing something else to solve more pressing problems. So it's not just, hey, we're going to come in and save you some money on licensing. We're also going to free up teammates and resources that can go and solve problems that are being, I won't say ignored, but had to be go into a backlog. And that's where I think we really provide as a force multiplier in the cloud computing program office of let's centrally figure something out for DoD-wide, solve it in an enduring manner, and allow the individual teams going back to focusing on their customer mission, which is most important to them.
Okay, all right. You touched a little bit on security and confidence of the user identity, and so most of our audience is familiar with HSPD 12. Two-factor authentication. People have CAC cards and PIV cards, and is your office looking at things beyond two-factor authentication, or simply two-factor authentication, continuing it for authentication identity management?
Well, I mean, I'll definitely say that nothing's off the table right now, but we have no plan of going in there and changing some of the fundamental policy of the DoD. That's not what our shop does. We work hand in hand with the DoD CIO and DISA risk management executive, just to make sure that we understand the policies well and we understand where possibly they're moving. However, definitely going beyond two-factor authentication, we want to leverage really what the DoD policy already allows us to do, to start leveraging FIDO2, to start leveraging out there with derived credentials. And that's really what a centralized authentication platform can do. Because as we start finding where these new technical capabilities can be implemented, instead of us trying to implement it across dozens or more of systems out there, really what we can do is implement it on a smaller scale and then provide a massive DoD-wide impact in a near immediate term. That's one thing also CCPO we're known for is we move fast. We definitely believe in the agile process development and deployment. I'll be the first one to say anybody that knows agile is not failing fast, but failing forward for us is learning from kind of our mistakes and then really embracing those mistakes in an open and transparent method so that we can share them with others.
Okay, good. Anything with biometrics for authentication or identity management? DoD has a biometrics program. I know that's not the focus right now, but are you looking at any biometrics?
We're looking at biometrics, but not necessarily in the traditional sense of fingerprints and retina scans and kind of out there. We'd be interested as that moves forward and that starts kind of filling in and educating the policy of the DoD to be used. But a lot of it also is the biometrics of usage data. So like, what are the patterns of usage of Pete Godby is a fundamental kind of biometric that we really aren't leveraging because we have so many different disparate sources out there. I want to be able to tell with a single identity if Pete Godby has a certain pattern of use and then breaks that pattern of use, where that is a security issue, not just getting access to logging into my email with my thumbprint. I mean, people are doing that already, quite honestly, on their iPhones. What I'm talking about doing is kind of moving to the next step of informing the larger conversation around, I hate saying to use trust again, but really educating our cyber defenders with that pattern of use.
Okay, good. Hey, in the last 30 or 40 seconds we have here, you're the user engagement officer, and what are the high-level milestones that you tell users you want to achieve, from now to the next year, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
So right now we have, with Global Directory, we have deployed for several 100,000 in the DoD. It's our goal of having the entire DoD within the next year as part of Global Directory. We are on glide path really for that, integration with the services components, but also integration outside of the DoD, working with our federal partners to build out authentication, and then determining what's the best path to start integrating with our defense industrial base and commercial partners.
Okay, awesome. Well, Colonel Godby, I think that's a wrap. We're up against a deadline, so I appreciate your time today. It was great seeing you and talking with you and sharing what your office is doing with our audience. So with that, we'll sign off.